Yo, DJ UFO, not in the studio. It's actually Sunday and I've had the morning off. We went to play golf, which I haven't been to for ages and ages and ages, so it was wicked. This is number 2, obviously, in the Close Encounters series of music production tutorial videos that I'm currently making. This one's all about utility EQ, as I like to call it. If this is something you didn't know about and you haven't been using, you want to include this in your workflow, because I'm telling you, this is a game changer. If you haven't been using this, this will change your whole outlook on making music. So with that being said, check out the video. If you have any questions, don't forget to put them down in the comments. I'll answer every single one that gets put down there. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you get informed the minute I upload a new video. With that all being said, let's crack on with the video. So peace. Okay everybody, welcome back. This obviously is the EQ video. Now when I say EQ, this is what I call sort of a utility EQ. It's just to sort things out that could give us potential problems in the future. There's other types of EQ. You know, sweetening type EQ where it adds character to the sound. None of that's going on this video. This is purely to help you get a cleaner, louder end result at the end of it. Now the best way to do this is to do it right from the start. Some people prefer to do it at the mastering stage when the track's mixed and then they just sort of EQ it then. I'm a believer in that you should do as least as possible of that at the mastering stage. You shouldn't need to do too much. So the way to take care of that is to do it throughout the mix as you're doing it. So right, where we're at, we've got our gain staging that was done, and we've got our levels done, rough levels done that we did with the pink noise. Now, if you remember me saying that you wouldn't get a perfect mix, you know, it's just to help you get a starting point, basically, the pink noise trick. It's just to get you started and get a sort of rough mix to start. Certain things in there are going to be too loud, certain things will be too quiet. All of these are tweakable, of course. You tweak these as you go through the mix. So what we're going to do is give you a quick blast of the track as it is. It literally just the levels have been done with the pink noise trick. I haven't added any EQ yet. I haven't tweaked any faders yet. So let's have a quick listen to see what we've got to start.
Different boy, a different girl, but we come from different worlds. Thought you'd never notice me. Thought our love could never be. Now we're walking hand in hand, across the sea, across the sand, in the darkness of the night. I'm hearing you breathe, I'm feeling alright.
Okay, so there you go. Very, very rough mix. Obviously, pretty far from being finished. But you get what I say about it being a more balanced sort of thing. That pink noise trick really helps you just get everything in proportion, roughly, so that then you can tweak it later on. So we're in a good place. We're in a good place. Now, the first thing we're going to do, EQ-wise, I thought I'd show you the kick drum. Now, what we're planning to do is basically, when I say a utility EQ, basically what I'm trying to say is that we want to get rid of frequencies in the frequency spectrum of each sound that isn't relevant to the track. Now, in a lot of cases, low end is a problem. If you've got very sort of high pitched noises or stuff that occupies higher up in the frequencies, like, you know, hi-hats, crash cymbals, ride cymbals, vocals even, all of that comes with some low end information that we just don't need because you can't hear it in the track. But what happens is, even though you can't physically hear it in the track, if you've got what we got here, 34 channels of stuff going on, all with the bottom end not filtered out, you get it 34 times all building up, and it just creates mess. It creates mud in your mix. It also stops you getting it as loud as it possibly could be at the mastering stage, because you've got loads of low end information which takes up loads of energy in general. So therefore you can't get it as loud as what you could have done if you'd have cut it all out, because it's just too much energy and it just starts to distort too early. So the idea is to cut top and bottom out of things in the first instance. It obviously gets a bit more involved than that later on. You don't want to start doing... well, actually, there's another thing I wanted to say, is that there's a lot of people that haven't been doing music, haven't been making music very long, assume that if a particular sound in their mix isn't poking through enough, the assumption is, well, add more top end, you know, to make it poke out, make it louder. This, in most cases, is a disaster. It actually creates a lot more problems than it solves. So the key really, as much as possible, I mean, this is my advice. This is just how I work. Other engineers might do it differently. But my advice is to not boost anything in the EQ unless you absolutely have to, or if it's for an effect, or if it's for some other reason. So anyway, I'm waffling on. Let's just get on with it. Let's load EQ. Now, my favourite EQ, you may have noticed, is the FabFilter Pro Q3. Now, I'm not being paid to say that. There's no affiliate program that I'm aware of, so I don't get paid for sort of punting their products. I can't say it enough. This EQ is amazing. It's very clean interface. You can see what's going on. You can resize it any way you want. You know, you can have it full screen if you want. It's just a very good EQ. You got, you know, when you play, let's mute that. Sorry, solo it. So you got the meters going on, all the scopes. You can see what's going on. You can have unlimited nodes to tweak EQs in different places, whatever you want. It's just a wicked EQ. It's also a dynamic EQ, which we'll get into in another video. But yeah, I can't emphasize enough. You know, there are people that will say, "Oh, you don't need a Pro Q3." No, you don't need it, but it enough makes your life a lot easier. I'm telling you. So my advice, if you can afford it, if you can get the money together, get yourself this EQ. If no other plugin, get this EQ first, because it's solid. Now, what's going on here? Now, you may notice as soon as I loaded up the EQ, I've got a default setting which I saved, which is an automatic low cut at 30 Hertz and an automatic high cut at 3000 Hertz. these are just starting points. Now, what I found is that, well, basically it's not what I found, it's physics. The human hearing only goes down to sort of 20 hertz and only goes up to sort of 20,000 kilohertz. Am I getting the hertz in? You know what I mean. There's a limit to what you can hear either side of those frequencies. Now, I choose to cut my stuff at the lowest 30 hertz. That's all bass stuff, all kick drums. Now, some people would think, you know, the uninitiated would assume as, well, hang on a minute, it's a bass drum. Why would you want to cut bass out of it? Surely you want to, you know, where the bass is going on, you want to boost that. That surely is what you need to do. It's not the case. Pro Q3 has got this like audition button on each node that you set. You can audition what it's actually cutting out or what it's actually doing. So you hear that very quiet low end. Absolutely useless to us. Absolutely no use to us. Everything's going on around here. So if you know you've got a gentle slope down to nothing. This area here is doing absolutely nothing. So we're doing a cut. If I move it up, you'll hear more of. That's what it's cutting out there, which makes it sound tinny. All right. So also, if you notice the slope, you can change that. Some people prefer to go a brick wall setting, so it cuts it. It absolutely cuts it there. I don't like to do that for some technical problems that can occur. Things like phasing, phase issues. That stuff we'll get into in another video. I like to keep mine about 12 dB per octave. It's a nice gentle slope, nothing too drastic, and it does the job. So we've cut out that low end, that very low end, right? And if I bypass the EQ, you won't hear any difference. Okay, so, and the same goes for the high end. You can get the same problems in the high end if you've got low, 34 channels of fizziness going on up here. It's just going to be a nightmare. So the trick is to just try and, you're not really going to need that all the way up there. Yeah, that's cool. We don't need to boost the bottom end. Some people will just go, whoa, yeah, we want more bass. We want more bass. No, you don't want to do that. It's a really bad thing to do. You've got to keep things as flat as possible, at least at this stage of the mix down. You don't want to get in to start doing all kinds of weird boosts and cuts, because it's just going to complicate things for you later on. All we're doing is getting rid of bottom end and top end that we don't need in the mix. That's essentially it. Now, so that's the bass. Let me zoom out on this mixer a little bit so we see what's going on. That's the kick drum. Let's try something with a bit more top end in it. Right, open hi-hat is a good example to use. We add the EQ. Now you can see from what's going on in the scope. Let's throw it down a bit. Most of what we need is happening up in this area. All of this down here is just junk that we just don't need in our mix. All of this is just noise. So if we bring the cut up, that's what you're hearing now, is that the solo, what we're actually going to take out. That's what we're getting rid of. Maybe a bit more. Okay, so that's EQ'd the bottom end out. If I bypass that, you hear that? It's very, very subtle, but it helps, believe me. You've got rid of all of this stuff here that you just aren't going to need. It's a high frequency sound, but there's always low frequency information in most of these sounds, and you just need to get rid of it. You just don't need it. It really does mess you up later on if you don't do this at the start. So same with the high end. Now, it's a high end, a high frequency sound. But this fizziness up around here, you just don't need it. And that to my ears, hang on, a little tiny bit more. That to my ears has cleaned that sound right up. See it with the kick drum. It's a bit loud. So just with the kick and the open hat playing now, if I get rid of the EQ that I've just done on the hi-hat, listen. Bypassed. You hear that? It's just cleaned it up. It's really, really subtle. You really should be listening to this on good headphones or good speakers to really hear what's going on. It's just cleaned it up. It's just made it sound cleaner, and it's also made it sound more sort of it's got more clarity in the top end, even though I haven't boosted in the top end. I've actually cut some of the top end. There's no boost going on, but because of the way audio works with the human brain, it actually sounds like it's got more high end. And that's the trick. That's what I'm trying to get through to you. I know I'm going to be repeating myself a lot. I'm trying to hammer it home because I know so many people that are inexperienced just think, oh, there's not enough top end on that. Boost it. And you can really get into some serious problems if you start doing that. And if you're doing mixes that sound muddy or scratchy or fizzy, I can almost guarantee that will be why. It's because you're not taking these steps early on in the mix to get rid of stuff that you just don't need in each sound. Now, it's not the most exciting job to do. Again, I mean, the first 3 stages I've gone through, we've gone through gain staging, we've gone through the pink noise trick, and now we're doing this EQing. Now, all 3 of these are very, very laborious, very, very unsexy. When you get into audio engineering, it's the last thing you want to be doing. You want to be listening to massive sounds and doing crazy effects and all of that. But I'm telling you now, please believe me, you've got to have the patience to do this stuff. It helps you later on. I can't get that through enough. It really does help you later on. So you've got to be patient and you've got to be methodical. It's just the way it is. So let's try a couple of other sounds. What else we've got going on here? Right, then these sounds are interesting. There's like the super saw sort of sound. Very, very fizzy on the high end. On the top end, very sort of. Now, let me turn it down a bit. Now, as you can see straight away, there's loads. All of this not being used. There's not actually anything going on down here. So therefore, just cut it anyway. You start to hear it around about 200. Right, then when I'm bypassing it, like now, that's off and that's on. You're not hearing any difference. That's a good thing. It means you just get in the habit of cutting out stuff you don't need. Now, I said it was fizzy. There you go, there's all that fizz all around sort of 1300 hertz. Kilohertz, whatever. You know what I mean. It's not making any difference to the sound to your ears. Well, not my ears anyway. That's bypassed. So it's just clearing up these sections that you're not necessarily going to hear, but it will just help you clean the mix up. There goes another one. Right, percussion sort of noise. You hear it, if you can hear like a sort of hissy sort of sound, that is my microphone. I can't do much about that, I'm afraid, so I do apologise. Let's turn it up a little bit so you can hear more of the sound. Now, this sound will be sort of playing in the background with the drums. So we don't actually need it to be very thick. It can be quite thin because most of what we're after is the sort of hi-hats at the top end. Obviously, there's nothing much going on down here anyway. So again, what you're hearing is what it's taken out, what it's going to get rid of. Hear the difference? It's quite a big difference actually. The top end, we just cut off just the top, very, very tippy top. Now we'll put that in context with the drums that we've already done. So that's the kick drum. Open hat. And don't forget, you don't be afraid to tweak it. You know, don't think, oh, well, I've set it with the pink noise trick. I don't want to move it. Feel free to move it around as you need. There you go. So we've got four sounds going, but we've got 3 different sounds that we've EQ'd. Let's bypass them all. You hear that? It's very subtle, but it's not as clean. Sounds pretty clean. Where's our bass? Right. Let me solo that. Now, in my bass, I've got, well, I say bass, off stabs. We've got this bass sound, this off stab sound, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Right, so let me turn it down a little bit. Okay, so the crack is, I tend to use 2 or more noises, usually 2 or 3 noises different for my off stab. So I've got a bass sound, and then I've got like a more fatter sort of analog sound. Now in this fat analog sound, there's going to be low end information. All of this. Now if I'm going to layer this with my bass sound, I want my bass sound to take care of the low end, and I want this sort of analog fat sound to take care of the low mids, high mids, because most of the interesting stuff is going on up around here, all around this area. So what I do is I cut all that bottom end out. Makes it sound really tinny on its own. But the fact that that's got no low end in it now will make it play nicely with the bass when we do that. It's so that you don't get clashing between bottom end in this sound, which you don't want the bottom end in this in that sound. You want the higher sort of analogy bit. And we'll take care of the bass as well while we're here. And we don't actually want any of this up here. I don't anyway. I want a nice bass sound, so we'll get rid of all of that, which makes it more of a bass sound. It's at 30 hertz already. That's fine. We don't need to touch that. So now we've got rid of all of this stuff on this sound, and to emphasize the bottom end on this sound, and the sort of exact mirror image over here with this one. We've got rid of all the a lot of the bottom end, and we're keeping just the low mids and upwards. Probably want to get rid of some of the top. There you go. And when they play together, you get more of a clean, more controlled off stab. Then we'll put the drums back on. Let's turn it up. probably take a bit more off of that percussion sound, to be honest. This clap. Now, it's also actually is a good thing to mention here. If you notice what I've been doing, I've been soloing the sound that we're going to EQ and then EQing it in solo. You want to do that, but you also need to sort of listen to it in context while you're EQing. That was a good example with that percussion noise. While it was playing with everything else, I heard that it was actually I could take a little bit more off, which is when it was soloed, it sounded fine. But in context of the track with everything else, it needed some more taking off. So there's a good example of what I'm talking about. You need to listen to everything in context because the end listener's never going to be listening to that percussion loop soloed on its own. They're going to be listening to the entire track mixed and finished. So you need to know that when everything's playing, they're all fitting together and playing together nicely. And the only way to do that is to keep doing it in context. So keep switching between solo just to get the roughness, how you want it. Then listen to it with the track and then tweak. That's the way to do it, really. Well, so now we're going to do this clap. Now, this low section here, we don't actually need. See that big sort of bump? That's completely, we just don't need, and anything below it, we certainly don't need. So that's everything it's getting rid of, we don't need. And now we'll listen to it in context. We don't actually want to unsolo everything, we just want to. If I bypass that EQ that we just did on that clap, let's see. There's a horrible sort of low end crunch to it, you see. And that's cleaned it right out. It's cleaned it up. Put the bass in. And there you go. That's sort of all you need to know. You just go through all of your tracks and just clean out the bottom end. Don't overcook it, but obviously, you know, just use your ears more than anything because it does help you. It's very handy to have these scopes, you know, all of these meters and stuff that can show you the shape of what's going on. That's really sort of good. If you haven't got Pro Q3, you can do all of this stuff with native EQs of the Cubase EQ. Now, I've not used the Cubase EQ for donkey's years, to be honest, so let's have a quick look at it. Let's pick a channel that we want to EQ. Let's have a look. Hold on. There you go, like a pad sound. Okay, let's turn it down a little bit. Let's add the Steinberg. Oh, there's a few Steinberg EQs. I think its frequency is their sort of latest one that everyone's excited about. Now, bear in mind, I've got no clue what I'm doing with this EQ because I've never used it. So, all right, so you've got different nodes. You've got the readout there. Different controls for different nodes. So 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay, right. So we're going to be wanting a cut from down here all the way down, really. Let's see, what do we need to do? It's a barrel shape. We need to make that into. No, bear with me, people. Oh, stereo mid-side. Yeah, okay. We want it in stereo. We want to. Can we change the shape of it or what? We need to change the actual shape. This is a barrel shape. We need to change it. there you go. Learn with UFO. I've got no clue what I'm doing. Wow. Oh, here we go. Sorry, here we go. Right, there we go. There's the different shapes. Now, if you don't know about EQ, you'll know you can have different shapes to what you're doing. This is called a bow shape because it's sort of like a bow, right? You can change it to like cuts, which is what we're talking about here, and this is cut different dBs per octave. So yeah, I had mine on 12 on Pro Q3, didn't I? Don't want any boost there. So then you just there you go. I mean, it's different EQ, same result. Probably move it to 24. Bypass. You see, you just don't need any of that low information there. Sounds nice when it's soloed, but when you got it in the track, you just don't need it in there because there's so much going on with the rest of the stuff that's going on. So yeah, I mean, if you know what you're doing with this, it's called frequency is the style word, but any EQ, the EQs are pretty much the same. You need one that's quite surgical because there are other types of EQs. Let me give you an example. There's one on Universal Audio, for instance, which is not surgical. This is done. They use this for sort of to flavour things rather than do surgical cuts like we've been doing. This just gives it a nice sort of sweep. There's not much to do with controls and stuff. You can just boost different frequencies, and it turns that down. You can get like bottom end. Different animal altogether than what we're talking about. So don't use an EQ like that for what we're using it for. You need something with a surgical, you can tell what's going on and all that. I still stand by what I say. As soon as you can, get yourself a copy of FabFilter Pro Q3. It's just, you can see why I'm saying what I'm saying. The frequency, if you can't afford it, this is totally good enough. It's a little bit more fiddly from what I can see, although that might be because I've never used it and I don't know what I'm doing with it. But you can get the same results with this EQ, and I'm pretty sure there's free EQ plugins you can get that can do the same job. So yeah, there we go. That is what I call utility EQing. It will help you. I know it's a bit boring and I know it's a bit work intensive. And it's not very sexy, but you know, combine the 3 tips that I've given you so far: the gain staging, the pink noise trick, and the utility EQing. Combine those 3 things, you have set a very, very solid bedrock to get your mix sounding really crisp, clear, clean, and get it to be mastered really loud, as loud as you want it to. So there's the end result. So there it is for now. If you enjoyed the video, if you got something from this, brilliant. If you did, leave a comment down below. If you've got any questions of anything I've said, also leave a comment. Leave it down in the comments below. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you get a notification every time I upload a new video, and there are going to be plenty of videos just like this. So I hope it helped you out, and thanks for listening, everybody, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.